Hello to all CENIMASTEr lovers. Hope you enjoy watching. Let's get started. In the future, a devastating zombie virus ravaged the world. Outbreaks emerged across every region of the country. Symptoms manifested within days, or even minutes. Any ordinary individual could transform into a relentless creature, completely devoid of self-control, in the blink of an eye. Their speed far exceeded that of traditional zombies, and they possessed an acute ability to track scents. Today, the World Health Organization officially declared it a global epidemic. The entire world was plunged into chaos and violence. Children, however, remained oblivious to the severity of the crisis. Abby was playing with her brother as usual, yet she sensed her mother's deep concern. Their father, a soldier, had been absent for several days. Worried about his family's safety, he instructed his wife to take the children and seek refuge with their relatives. Without hesitation, the mother quickly packed a bag, gathered the children, and headed to the car. As they were leaving the house, Abby was suddenly attacked by a zombie. She managed to evade capture by hiding under the car, unharmed, but she watched in horror as her mother and brother were brutally seized. Powerless, she witnessed her mother undergo a rapid transformation into a zombie. Just then, a soldier named Jerry arrived and shot her mother. He instructed Abby to cover her ears before firing at the boy. Years passed, and Abby grew into a young woman. She was raised under the guidance of Soldier Mike, who trained her extensively in wilderness survival after the zombie virus decimated the world. Human civilization deteriorated rapidly, buildings overtaken by creeping vegetation, gradually succumbing to nature's grasp. Abby and Mike devised a plan to live by the sea. That night, they set up camp deep within the forest. Mike carefully placed traps around the camp. In the dead of night, one of the traps was triggered. He immediately awoke, scanning his surroundings. A tuft of animal fur was caught in the mechanism. Assuming it was just a wild animal, he dismissed it as an accident. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the trees. Mike calmed the frightened horse and fired a shot. At that moment, the enemy revealed itself. To his shock, it was a zombie. Without hesitation, Mike and Abby fled swiftly, maintaining their training as they moved. For hours, they encountered no further threats. By noon, they were traversing a rugged dirt slope when they spotted a car in the distance. The driver inside bolted from the vehicle in a panic. Out of nowhere, a zombie lunged at him. Mike cautioned Abby against acting impulsively, but the girl instinctively pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed the driver, forcing Mike to eliminate the zombie himself. They searched the vehicle for anything of value. Nearby, voices crackled through a communicator left in the car. Mike, wary of conflict, decided to leave, but Abby was eager to make contact. Before long, a convoy approached. She explained that their friend had been attacked, but the group's leader ordered his men to lower their weapons and survey the area. Despite repeated efforts from Abby to establish trust, the convoy members remained wary, heightening tensions. A pregnant woman stepped out of the vehicle, raising her hand as a gesture for everyone to stand down. Strange noises echoed from the top of the hill. The nearby horse grew uneasy, slowing its pace as a horde of zombies surged from all directions. The leader swiftly commanded everyone to retreat to the car. Mike and Abby stood back to back, unleashing a barrage of gunfire. As the sheer number of undead overwhelmed them, they swiftly drew their swords to conserve ammunition, cutting down their attackers with precision. The convoy members retaliated fiercely, plunging the entire slope into chaos. A woman with coarse, unkempt hair brandished a Molotov, but before she could throw it, a zombie struck her from behind. The flaming bottle slipped from her grasp and shattered upon the pregnant woman's car, igniting it in a blaze. Meanwhile, a towering, muscular man wrestled against an oncoming zombie, desperately hoping for assistance. Before help could arrive, the creature's teeth bite his shoulder. Realizing his grim fate, he reached for his firearm, intent on taking his own life before turning. But when he pulled the trigger, the gun merely clicked. The gun was empty. As his transformation began, another zombie lunged at the convoy leader, tearing into him. Abby sprang into action, aiding the two pregnant women into the vehicle while Mike fought through the relentless swarm. The situation deteriorated rapidly, and as the hungry zombies closed in, Abby lost their supplies in the chaos. She knew that they had suffered catastrophic losses, both in resources and ammunition. Mike asked the pregnant woman where they had originally been headed. She revealed that a colony near the river in the northeast was their intended destination. They had hoped to find refuge there. Mike, however, had encountered numerous colonies on his journey, and he knew that most were hostile toward outsiders. He had no intention of heading northeast. As Mike veered onto a side road, the car suddenly broke down. David, the pregnant woman's husband, inspected the engine and determined that it will not be repaired. With no other option, they were forced to continue on foot. After a long trek, they arrived at a settlement known as Sunrise Farm, where they decided to seek refuge in an abandoned building. Mike cautiously scouted ahead, ensuring the area was secure before they settled in. Once confident it was safe, they ignited a fire inside to keep warm. During their brief respite, Abby engaged in conversation with the couple. Through their exchange, it became clear that their group had once lived on a secluded farm. Initially, they had about 40 people, but disaster struck when zombies overran their land. In a desperate attempt to fend off the horde, they set fire to their wheat fields, successfully driving the undead away but destroying their entire food supply in the process. With starvation looming, their leader reached out to a nearby colony via radio. He learned of a settlement located along the riverbank, a place known as Boat Town. The survivors there had lashed together several broken boats, forming a floating community of over 100 people. Though food and water were scarce, the colony at least had a doctor. After hearing the pregnant woman's story, the group reconsidered their next move. Abby revealed that she and Mike had originally planned to head west, reach the coast, and find passage to a rumored refugee camp. At that moment, Mike finished setting up traps around their shelter. He then unrolled a map, pointing out the route to Boattown for David and his wife. However, deep down, he had no intention of allowing the couple to go there, at least not yet. Mike was reluctant to let the couple head toward Boattown just yet. The zombies were still swarming, and there was a chance they could pick up their scent. In this situation, their only option was to put as much distance between themselves and the horde as possible. Abby believed they had already traveled far enough, but Mike remained unconvinced. Abby didn't understand his hesitation. To her, visiting Boattown seemed like a logical move. What if it's actually a safe place to live, she argued, but Mike was unwavering. He had already taught her that wandering west without a clear plan, like they had done today, could lead to disaster. That night, a fierce storm rolled in, with thunder rumbling and lightning tearing through the sky. In the darkness, zombies emerged from the forest and stumbled upon Mike's abandoned car. This was an alarming revelation. It meant that the creatures still retained a degree of intelligence. David hadn't slept a wink. His leg had been twisted during their escape, but he kept silent, not wanting to worry his wife. However, Mike was beginning to feel the weight of their presence. It was clear they were slowing him down. Taking charge, he finally proposed leading them to Boattown himself. Meanwhile, on the roof, Abby heard the distinct sounds of zombies nearby. She quickly gathered her belongings, preparing to alert Mike. But before she could react, the undead had already infiltrated the building. Abby chased one of them through the halls, leading it toward a shattered window. As it lunged for her, she grabbed hold of the rusted iron bars beside the frame. The zombie, unable to stop in time, hurtled forward and plummeted outside. Just then, Mike appeared, grabbing Abby and pulling her away from the opening. But it was too late. The noise had drawn more of the horde, and they were now swarming toward the breach. The situation spiraled out of control. Amidst the chaos, a misstep caused an explosion, forcing the group to make a desperate escape from Sunrise Farm. As they fled, a memory struck Abby. She had been to this area once before, as a child. If her recollection was correct, a civilian airport was located just a few miles away. Her father had once taken her there to fly a small plane. She remembered there being at least a dozen aircraft parked at the site. If they could find a functional plane, it would significantly cut down their travel time and make their journey far safer. However, Mike was wary. It was a huge risk. The airport could be completely overrun with zombies. David, noticing the disagreement between the two, proposed a simple solution: a vote. In the end, Abby's idea won by a count of 3-2. With the unborn child counting as their fifth member, Mike had no choice but to concede. And so, reluctantly, they set off toward the airport. After walking only a short distance, they stumbled upon an abandoned car with a deflated tire. The scene was grim. The passengers inside had been shot dead. Mike immediately took control of the situation, instructing everyone to search the nearby buildings. There was a chance they could find some supplies. Abby and David moved cautiously, conducting a general sweep of the area. They had no idea that a family of 3 was cowering behind a stone wall, holding their breath to remain unnoticed. Instead, Abby and David managed to find a few cans and medications, but still valuable. In the trunk of the car, they also found a wheelchair. It wasn't much, but at least they could use it to push the pregnant woman while the rest of them walked. Just as they were about to move on, the zombies that had been trailing them picked up on the hidden family's scent. In an instant, chaos erupted. The 2 young boys tried to flee but stumbled, their cries cut short as the undead swarmed them. Helpless to intervene, Mike and the others pressed forward, forcing themselves to ignore the horrors behind them. At last, they reached the airport. As they lifted their eyes, they were met with yet another devastating sight. The field was barren. The grass had been flattened, and there was nothing left. As they arrived, they found the grassy field completely barren. There was nothing left. Mike let out a sarcastic chuckle. "Didn't I tell you not to waste time on this?" Abby felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. Scanning the area, she noticed her father's old barn standing at the end of a dirt road. Without hesitation, she rushed toward it and pushed open the heavy wooden doors. To her amazement, inside sat the very plane her father had left behind. Mike immediately sprang into action. He handed a gun to the pregnant woman for protection and instructed David to stay back and check the aircraft. He took Abby with him to scout the nearby buildings, ensuring there were no lurking threats. Climbing up the watchtower, they positioned themselves to get a clear view of the surroundings. From this vantage point, they could spot any approaching danger well in advance, but their relief was short-lived. A mass of zombies emerged from the forest, moving in their direction. Without wasting a second, Mike and Abby rushed back to warn David and his wife. David hurried to start the engine, while Abby helped the pregnant woman board. At the most critical moment, the plane's engine roared to life, and the aircraft lurched forward just as the horde reached them. Mike flung open the door, using the momentum to knock back some of the zombies clinging to the fuselage. As the wheels left the ground, they barely escaped the outstretched arms of the undead below. For the first time in a long while, a sense of victory settled over them. They had made it. But their celebration was premature. Mid-flight, a sudden malfunction caused thick black smoke to pour from the engine. Warning lights flickered across the dashboard, and within moments, the aircraft was spiraling downward. The impact was inevitable. The plane crashed into a dense cluster of trees, the foliage acting as a natural cushion, softening the fall. By some miracle, all 4 of them survived, shaken but unharmed. As the dust settled, Mike unfolded the map, assessing their position. They were only 1 hill away from Boattown, just a 2-day trek. Realizing they had no other option, Mike decided they would rest for the night and continue their journey at first light. They set off the next morning. David helped his wife lie down to rest, then wandered into an empty warehouse carrying a lantern lantern. Meanwhile, Mike heard a noise outside and rushed to investigate. It turned out to be the pregnant woman, searching for food because she was hungry. As they spoke, Mike shared a story from his past. 3 months after he found Abby, he had rescued a boy named Jimmy. His mother, an addict, had been bitten by a zombie while still under the influence of drugs. But Jimmy was strong and intelligent, and he ended up staying with Mike and Abby. He had a contagious laugh, always finding a way to lift their spirits. But then, Jimmy was bitten. Mike had to put him down himself. Since the outbreak of the zombie virus, Mike had faced similar situations repeatedly. He had lost countless friends, forced to kill those he cared about time and time again. Over the years, he built walls around himself, choosing not to form bonds with strangers. He simply believed that if he didn't get attached, he wouldn't have to suffer the pain of loss. During a brief pause in their conversation, David silently retrieved a gun, preparing to end his own life. But despite his resolve, he couldn't summon the courage to pull the trigger. He rolled up his pant leg, revealing a festering bite wound. David was infected. However, he hadn't yet succumbed to the virus, as the time it took for symptoms to appear varied from person to person. Mike and the others hadn't noticed anything unusual about him until that day. As they passed through a vast expanse of dried farmland and entered a nearby forest, David's condition worsened. He was drenched in sweat, his movements growing unsteady. His wife noticed the heat radiating from his forehead, and Mike soon spotted the bloodstains on his pants. When the pregnant woman stepped away for a moment, Mike seized the opportunity. He pinned David against a nearby tree and yanked up his pant leg. Upon seeing the infected wound, Mike immediately pulled out his gun. Just then, Abby called out to him, forcing him to pause. He turned to David and gave him a choice. Make a decision quickly. Before David could respond, Mike moved toward Abby to check on the situation. Ahead of them stood a house with its lights still on. Mike cautiously approached, spotting a flashlight illuminating the area above the house. A voice crackled over a radio, warning them not to come any closer. Ignoring Mike's concerns, Abby stepped into the light and explained that they were just passing travelers, including a pregnant woman in need of rest. After a brief silence, the house went dark. Then, the front door creaked open. Mike and Abby raised their hands as they stepped inside, placing their weapons into a box at the entrance. David and his wife followed closely behind. The four of them were led into the house's living room, where they were met with an unexpected sight. Not only were the lights still functional, but the place also had electricity and even some experimental supplies. Their host, an elderly man, introduced himself as an engineer. He explained that he had built an independent power system to sustain the house's basic electricity needs. He had also cultivated a small garden, growing vegetables and fruits to provide a steady food supply. After finishing his introduction, he brought out food and set it before them. Although it was just some ordinary vegetables for people who had been surviving on canned food every day, it was a rare and delicious meal. David eagerly took a hot shower, while Mike carried the bags to settle in. As he entered the guest room, he was surprised to find a laptop sitting on the table. Curious, he took out a USB cable from his bag and powered it on. Inside, he found pictures of himself and his wife. The woman in the photos was pregnant. On the other side of the house, Abby came across a family photo. This cozy home made everyone nostalgic for life before the disaster. However, the pregnant woman couldn't shake off a growing sense of unease. The baby inside her had barely moved, and it filled her with worry about its safety. After a short rest, the group gathered in the living room. The owner of the house brought out some homemade wine. As they talked, he revealed that the house had been standing for 20 years. He had lived there since he got married, but his wife had been killed by a zombie. Although he had heard about the so-called boat country, he preferred to stay alone. As their conversation deepened, the owner's views became increasingly unsettling. He believed that the virus was nature's way of cleansing the weak from the earth. He showed no sympathy for the dead. His words sent a wave of unease through Mike. Meanwhile, David was feeling increasingly exhausted. He walked toward the sink and lifted his shirt, revealing that the infection had spread through his body. Trying to remain composed, he returned to the living room, only to find that his wife, Abby, and the others had all fainted. Something had been mixed into the wine. At that moment, the owner of the house lifted his sleeve, revealing a strange device strapped to his arm. The device emitted a high-frequency whistle that made David's head pound with unbearable pain. The owner smirked. He explained that this was a special dog whistle. It only worked on the infected. Before David could react, the man restrained him, tying him up along with the others. Then, he locked them all inside a makeshift laboratory. The owner of the house wasn't just some survivalist. He was a mad scientist, obsessed with studying the infected. He wanted to test a so-called stimulating factor that enhanced the physical abilities of those affected by the virus. No sane person could understand the depths of his madness. Then, the man stepped into the shadows and revealed a rusted iron cage. Inside, they saw something horrifying. It was his wife, or at least what remained of her. She had undergone grotesque mutations. It was clear that he had been experimenting on her. Now, he was eager to continue his research, with David as his next test subject. The pregnant woman's face went pale. She had just realized the truth. Her husband had been bitten. The owner of the house opened the cage. Using his special dog whistle, he commanded the mutated zombies to attack the captive Mike and the others. Mike struggled against his restraints, trying to break free, but before the zombies could reach them, they suddenly turned and attacked David instead. The virus had enhanced David's physical abilities, making him far stronger than a normal human. Fueled by desperation, he shattered his chains with inhuman force. The impact sent debris tumbling from the walls. Then, with a final burst of strength, David shoved the zombies away and turned toward Mike and the others, determined to set them free. The owner of the house quickly used the dog whistle to try to stop him, but but suddenly, David ignored the pain in his head and freed the remaining 3 from their chains. Mike quickly grabbed a weapon from the table and began shooting. The 4 of them rushed out of the lab, and Mike locked the owner of the house behind the door, instructing his father to take the car keys from the table. Just as the owner of the house was about to break through the wooden door, Mike turned and struck David with a box. He knew that allowing an infected person to continue with them was a risk they couldn't afford. However, at that very moment, the owner of the house broke through the wooden door. The 4 of them quickly jumped into the car and sped away. At the same time, the horde of zombies that had been chasing Mike and the others was still in pursuit, moving with the wind, drawing closer and closer to their location. But Mike was now facing an even bigger crisis. The pregnant woman had started delivering. They needed to find a safe place for her to give birth, but the horde of zombies blocked the road ahead. Mike shouted for everyone to hold on tight as they were about to plow through the zombies. The creatures moved quickly, some dodging, while others began chasing them. At a critical moment, a fallen tree trunk blocked their path. Mike had no choice but to order everyone out of the vehicle, urging them to continue on foot. The boat country wasn't far. They just needed to endure a little longer. David, seeing the zombies getting closer and closer, urged his wife to go ahead with Mike. Already infected with the virus, he knew his time was limited. It was better for him to stay behind and hold off the zombies. Mike hesitated but ultimately ran forward with the pregnant woman. David, with one final act of defiance, chose to face the inevitable on his own terms. He lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and charged at the oncoming horde, fighting desperately. For some reason, David seemed stronger than a normal zombie, but he wasn't nearly as powerful as the leader of the horde. The leader of the zombies grabbed David and, without hesitation, snapped his neck. With David's resistance ended, the horde continued its relentless pursuit. Mike, Abby, and the pregnant woman ran hysterically, their lungs burning from exhaustion. Finally, they saw the watchtower of the boat country. Abby sprinted ahead, screaming for help. The people in the watchtower spotted the group and immediately opened fire on the zombies, successfully covering their retreat. They managed to reach the dock, where a boat was waiting. Mike carefully placed the pregnant woman on a bed inside the boat, while a blonde woman stayed behind to tend to her. She instructed Abby and Mike to step out first. The people on the boat were cautious, thoroughly examining them for any wounds to ensure they weren't infected. Only later did they learn that this place was called Kingsport. Though their lives had been spared, Mike couldn't shake off a bad feeling about this place. The next day, George, the leader of the colony, summoned Mike and Abby for a conversation. He welcomed them to Kingsport on behalf of the community, expressing confidence that everyone could live in peace there. But Mike had no intention of staying long. He stated firmly that as soon as the pregnant woman gave birth, they would be leaving. Mike understood the dark nature of humanity all too well. At first, people might seem friendly, but over time, the situation would inevitably deteriorate. However, Abby was exhausted from constantly being on the run. She just wanted to stay and live a stable life. Their conversation was interrupted by the blonde woman, who informed them that the newborn was healthy, but the mother's condition was critical, and she might not have much time left. With a faint smile, the woman named her daughter Hope, as she had been her only beacon of light in this darkness. But fate was cruel. She wouldn't live to see her child grow up. All she could do was entrust her to Mike, wishing for her to grow strong like her father. And Mike, unable to refuse her dying wish, took on the heavy responsibility. Meanwhile, the owner of the house was lurking in the forest near the riverbank, controlling a massive horde of zombies with his dog whistle, staring at Kingsport in the distance, plotting his next move. Back in Kingsport, Mike was forced to stay temporarily to care for the baby, while Abby quickly adapted to life on the boat and befriended a blonde young man. One night, while following him and another girl, Abby stumbled upon a strange device in the cabin, which he explained was their last line of defense. Kingsport was surrounded by landmines, set to detonate if zombies attacked. He also revealed a secret tunnel beneath the settlement, originally meant for a dam that was never built. The next day, the owner of the house used his whistle to lure the zombie horde straight to Kingsport. A guard completely unaware, zombies flooded the settlement. Mike rushed to secure the baby before searching for Abby, but the attack was too sudden. While Abby was saving someone, the owner of the house ambushed her. Hearing her scream, Mike ran to help but was tackled by a zombie. Swing. The owner of the house attacked him, kicking him repeatedly, muttering, "Humans cannot defy the laws of evolution." Seizing an opportunity, Mike smashed the yellow device controlling the zombies, turning them against the owner of the house, who was swiftly devoured. Meanwhile, the blonde young man and the survivors escaped through the tunnel, but Abby and Mike hadn't made it out yet. As Abby fought to survive, the zombie leader